Well, let me say that the title of your website, as well as, I guess the overarching title of all the interviews and presentations, The Secret of Everything. That's big. That's all inclusive. That covers everything. So that gives us an idea that what we're going to talk about covers everyone. Everyone. Doesn't matter if it's a baby or a 15-year-old, 25-year-old, 95-year-old. Of course, the baby won't understand the language, but if you could, I'm I have two backgrounds. A background in the principles, which is what primarily this website and this channel deals with, the principles behind the experience of life. And for the last 30 years or so, that has been something that has been very important to me. I've had insights on the nature of life by considering these principles. The other side is I'm a yoga teacher, and I've been teaching and practicing yoga for over 50 years. So it's been a long time. And yoga is very much easily, there is no conflict between the principles it is and yoga. It just, you can imagine that we're all different people in that our personal realities, what we think in our heads, are different from anyone else. So when we're going through life and we are experiencing our day, moment to moment day, whether it's school, work, talking to our friends, whatever we're doing, we're having a separate reality. And that separate reality is what our thinking brings us. Whether we know we're thinking or not, what I've learned is that our thinking brings us this reality that we see, that we experience. Whether we're feeling up or down, angry or happy, whether we're just walking in the woods and looking at the trees in a pleasant way, whether we're going to a party and feeling jealous because we see someone that we didn't want to see, for instance, all of those things, that entire experience that comes to our vision, that comes to our hearing, that comes to our touch, that comes to our senses, that entire experience, and even the experience of a thought we might have, let's say that jealous thought, all of that comes to us by way of our thought. Whether the thought is conscious or not, it comes to us by way of thought. So yoga deals with that as well. Yoga, really, that's the basis of yoga. Well, maybe later, if we go there, we can talk about the difference. There is a difference between what's been discovered in the principles and, let's say, other practices and other mindfulness type practices that get us to a better place within ourselves, that help us to know ourselves. The principles has a unique difference, and we can talk about that later. But my background, again, yoga and the principles, and I find that they complement each other. In fact, anything, this is why we call it the secret to everything, because anything is brought to us, because it's an experience, is brought to us by our thinking. And that thought is made real to us or to someone else differently. And that is brought to us by our consciousness. So a thought that we have might be the thought to I'll go back to that, going to a party and feeling jealous because you see that boyfriend or that girlfriend you didn't want to see. That thought is brought to us by our thought, that feeling that we have, jealousy, brought to us by our thought. But consciousness makes it real. So because consciousness makes it real, it could be different, real, for my friend Jim or me. And that's because we have different levels of consciousness. So I might have a higher mood, and we could call a level of consciousness mood. I could have, for our purposes, I can have a higher mood, or he can have a higher mood, and we could say, oh, there's that person, I feel some jealousy, and nothing comes of it. Or I could be in a lower mood and I can say, oh, that bothers me. 5 minutes later, an hour later, a week later, it may still bother me. What that difference is not the thought, because the thought we may have similar thoughts, but is the consciousness. So consciousness, it's just a way of seeing that, of how consciousness could make something more real for one person and not as real for the other person. So consciousness makes our thinking real, whether we see this or not. It's this, the secret to everything is that we are all conscious beings, and we are all experiencers. We are the experiencers of our life. And being the experiences of our life, being the consciousness who also has a thought, who also has a stream of thoughts, we experience life. So for when the thought comes together with consciousness, it creates this reality for us we call life. Now, that may not be a real to you, to people listening, and for some it might be. But that's the nature of consciousness right there. To some, it'll be more real, and to others, it won't. But that's the nature of life, because as we live life, things become more real that weren't real before. And as we live life, things happen. We do have experiences, and those experiences can touch us inside. When we can touch our wisdom, and we could say, me too, I've experienced, I see where that is now. And that's where I want to go here. I would like if people could let go of their perhaps expectations, perhaps even trying to figure it out, and just say, let me hear something. Maybe I'll hear something, maybe I won't, but let me be open for something new. And in that opening, something can happen beyond the level of thinking we have right now, beyond the thought that would be available to us right now. The title of this I picked was to experience that we are not what we think. The truth is, we are not what we think. Because as soon as we think a thought, we are no longer in the present now. We're no longer in the moment. As soon as we think a thought, we have created a mental picture, a mental image, it is a mental concept of it, and that separates us from it. who we are is the experiencer of that thought, or the experiencer of skiing down a hill, or the experiencer of the jealousy at the party, the experiencer of our mind, the experiencer. And because of that, anything we think is at least one step removed from who we truly are. So that I think most people could see, that if I am the experiencer and I have a thought about who I am, that thought couldn't possibly be who I am because it's a thought about who I am. Now, we can get kind of intellectual about that, but I'm saying let go of that. So here is what has us let go of that as an intellectual thing. To breathe in, fill the lungs with breath, and let out a sigh. One more time. Relax, relax, relax even deeper. Move from thinking and doing to feeling and being. So moving from active thinking, which we might call the intellect, could even say it might be the ego, to just feeling, puts us in a place where we could feel, we will feel our thinking, but it puts us into the doorway for us to feel our being. So as soon as we feel, we've moved to being. And that's the brilliance of feeling. So one thing that the secret to everything has opened up for us is this brilliant handle. It's a tool that allows us to not overthink something and allows us to not try to figure something out. Back in the 60s and 70s, when I was a hippie, we used to say, I was in the human potential movement studying psychology. And we used to say, trying to think your way out of a particular mental frame of mind was like trying to punch your way out of a paper bag. If you were placed in a paper bag and you could actually be suspended in a paper bag. Now, don't try this at home. You can't, because there's no point of reference outside the bag. So even though the bag is thin, even though it may even be maybe a very thin paper bag, unless you had some way to have a point of base of power, a base that you could hold on to, and you could push against that bag, unless you could do that, it's physically impossible to even go through that thin paper bag. So like that, we could probably think of other examples in life where that's true. But like that, if we're in a particular frame of mind, and that frame of mind might be a down mood, we can't get out of that just by trying to think our way out. It's like punching out of that paper bag. We just can't do it. We have to have a point of reference outside of that. We have to be outside. So how do you get a point of reference outside if you're inside? Well, that's impossible to do. And that's why the intellect doesn't get us to where we want to go. But what we can do is move from thinking to feeling. As soon as we move to feeling, And what we're doing is we're really giving up the thinking. The thoughts may still be there, and they may even be nagging us, but we've started the process. We've started to say, I'm going to let go of this thinking. We've started to, I'm going to let go. I know it's not there, and I'm going to, even though it still bothers us, I'm going to let go of that jealousy. I'm going to not try to think my way out of it. Why is it always happening to me, so to speak? And as soon as we move into this sense of, okay, I'm going to feel. Now, here's the secret to everything piece of information is that feeling is actually, we've now moved to something, we've now moved to a wormhole that will get us out of that mood. Because when we start to feel, we're feeling our thinking. Before we were actually wrapped in our thinking, trying to punch our way out, can't do it. But as soon as we start to feel, we fall down that slide. We go through that, because thought again is not us. It's not who we are. But being is who we are. So when we start to feel, we're actually closer to our true nature, even if we're thinking the jealousy, even if we're feeling rather the jealousy. But what happens with feeling, and this is the wormhole part, what happens with feeling, as soon as we start to feel what is real for us, that feeling starts to move. That energy behind that starts to go away. Now, what comes next, no one knows. We never know what's going to come next. We never know what the next thought is going to be. Conscious life is really one thought after another, and we don't know what it's going to be. We kind of suspect that, if we're having a happy thought, why wouldn't we have another one? But as soon as we start feeling deeper, one of the aspects of the secret to everything is that the secret is who we are, and who we are is innate. Who we are is our birthright. And the secret there is that we are all right, is that we are not broken. Anytime. Is that there is a perfection to who we are as a being. But who we think we are, again, we're going back to we are not who we think we are. Who we think we are, and sometimes this is an automatic thing because we're living life in this conscious soup. Who we think we are is not who we are, and it's not going to, it's something less, it's something separate from this being, this perfect, self-writing, innate birthright being that we are. So as soon as we start to feel it, I can't explain why this happens, but it's magic. That feeling starts to dissipate if it's not a nice feeling. But what comes behind it is what's always there is the neutral ground of our being, the neutral feeling. And that neutral feeling, neutral meaning it's not exciting and it's not sad. It's not happy. It's not mad. It's just minus any of that. It's just the feeling of who we are deep inside. The beautiful thing is the feeling of who we are, this neutral feeling, is that is love. That is love. Now, that's not what we're taught love is by our society. That's not what we found love to be as we go through development and hormones and being a teenager, because there's other things that are present for us in our environment that we think we might be, or that in our thinking that we think we might be. See, we're back to we're not our thinking. So this is good news, because this means that we don't have to try to fix our problems at all. In fact, trying to fix our problems at the very best might distract us from those problems, but then we're right back into it again pretty soon. The good news is that if we feel, which is a natural ability that we have, the ability to feel, we are feeling our thinking. But that as that thinking starts to clear, we go down, we drop down to a quiet mind. And what's left is one thought. That thought is who we are. That thought is who we are. That thought feels like love. So that's another way of approaching it. So anyway, do you have any questions?
No, I'm just feeling really good here. Questions have completely gone out of my mind.
Yeah. Good. Good.
Yeah. So, yeah. Whoa.
I want to say, I have a 13-year-old who, and I've also have a 40-year-old daughter and a 32-year-old daughter, and a lot of grandchildren. And my 13-year-old, what I'm working with now, is that he doesn't find any space in his life. He is very much into video games, and he's very, very much wanting to play them for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And they say, well, you know what? 4 hours is enough today. Let's do something else. What can I do? I'm bored. There's nothing I can do. That's all I can do. I said, well, we have to first stop playing the video game and quiet down, and then we can find something else to do. You'll think of something else to do. The next thought will be, oh, well, I didn't think about this before when I was bored, but now I'm not bored because I have this thought. Maybe we'll go swimming. Maybe I can read a book. And I can't he hasn't seen that yet. Now, that shift occurs if we go swimming and if we read a book. But at first he gets annoyed when you're interrupting my game, right? But I want to get him to see, and it'll happen. 13, but get him to see that if he drops into this being state, if he can feel what he's feeling when he's feeling boredom, is he's feeling this his thinking is one of whatever would comprise that for that individual, this feeling that he labels boredom. But if he actually could even feel that boredom, he doesn't want to feel the boredom. He wants to play the game because the game keeps him from that boredom. And then, of course, there's other reasons. I'm interested in meeting my friends and this and that. But what keeps the fuel going is that I cannot stop playing this game. Is that he doesn't stop playing the game so that he can feel the boredom. And like we said before, the feeling changes. So as a real example, if there's something you want to change, rather than trying to figure it out, and rather than continuing to enact that again and again and again, one has to have initial courage. The courage to say, I'm going to stop this right now, this doing, and I'm going to feel what there is to feel. That initial courage, that takes a little bit of courage because it doesn't feel good to feel what there is to feel when you're doing something to avoid what it is you're feeling. It doesn't feel good, but that will change. And that's where the courage is, and the faith that if I feel it and I give it a chance, I give it some time, who knows what that time is, but it's going to change because that's the nature of thought. It's one thought after another. And when we're not engaged in that thought, trying to work it out, that thought changes just like the clouds in the sky change. If our basic nature is the sky, if you can imagine this in this analogy, it is the sky. And wisdom shines through the sky because that's the sunlight coming down, shining through this beautiful blue sky. And some clouds come along. These clouds might be unclear thoughts, thoughts that bring a funky feeling, something we don't really want to feel, the boredom, the jealousy, the whatever. If there's a lot of clouds, we're in a mood. We can't, that wisdom is not going to shine through. The sky being us is always a neutral environment. It can have clouds, it can have sunshine. But if there's some clouds and those clouds aren't too dark, some of the wisdom comes through. But if those clouds get really dark and we're going to have a storm, the thing I want to say is, now that we have that analogy set up, is that if we just wait long enough, the weather changes. Those clouds change. Those clouds move on, and it's blue skies again. Now, when we're in the clouds, we don't see the nature of the sky. We just see the clouds. But when the clouds move, then we're able to say, okay, this is who we are. It's just nature of the sky. It's neutral. It just is. And in fact, we can't even find the sky. If you ever decide, well, there's a sky up there, I see it's blue. When we get in an airplane, I'm going to go find that sky. When we get there, we realize that it's intangible. That's our nature. It's intangible. But again, here's the rub. How do we know? How do we find something of our nature that's intangible? Feeling again. Sid Banks said, look for a beautiful feeling. So the fastest way, and in fact, it may be the only way that we could experience this innate, beautiful, self-writing, true nature of ourselves, this being that we are. It's not over there. It's right here where we are right now. In fact, it is the now, but that's another story. That's another level of understanding. But this, how do we get to it? We look for beautiful feelings. And that means something different to everyone. Some people, beautiful feeling is a feeling of relaxation. Another person, a beautiful feeling is that wonderful feeling we get when we walk in the woods, or a feeling of joy. And we can have different words and different labels. It's not the words. It's not the label. But we know, I think most humans could identify that beautiful feeling. And for them to know, and this is the secret, part of the secret to everything, is that beautiful feeling. As it gets more and more beautiful, we're experiencing more and more of our true self. The ancient Greeks said, put it on the temple of Delphi right across, know thyself. Number one in life, know thyself. So there we go. We are something we can experience through feeling. It's a beautiful feeling, and it immediately raises our conscious level. It immediately raises our mood. That is to say, mood. If we want to live in a happier space, in a happier mood, we feel a beautiful feeling. We're feeling more our nature. And to get to that beautiful feeling, just whatever is going on in whatever you feel, whatever you're thinking, just move to that feeling, watch that feeling. Now, I want to say there has been I hear these discussions, and through the years I've been with the principles for 30 years, 25 years. I hear discussions, well, there's nothing to do. There can't be a practice. Oh, there's plenty to do. Well, I don't know. I know that the practice maybe is living life. But what there is to know what direction to look in. If we're looking for ourselves in the outside world, if we're looking for ourselves in the things we do, it just not, it's never going to find it. It's not very satisfying. If we're looking for ourselves in the things we think, well, they're thought forms. They're like doing. They're just another form of doing. We're thinking now rather, but if we know to look inside, and that inside means something different to everybody, but if we know to feel, and I will say right now, especially for young people, we all know what a feeling is like. Know that what you're feeling is what you're thinking. That if you're thinking, if you allow the mind to quiet down, what's left after the mind quiets down is the one thought of who you are, then you're going to feel who you are. Now, the other approach, which is even more powerful, is quiet down and feel. And when you start feeling beautiful feelings, now you're feeling who you are. Guaranteed you're going to have a quiet mind. So, it's pick the direction you come from.
What's coming to my mind now is that that may not make a lot of sense to the young people that I've been speaking to, like your son, are so busy, have such busy. As soon as you say one thing, it's another thought, and it's another thought, and listening to it sometimes doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to me, because the thoughts are so busy that what they're saying doesn't actually answer, or doesn't say any. I'll say one thing and they'll say something completely different, and I'm like, what's that got to do with it?
Right.
And it's just so much busy thinking going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've had the greatest success with, and this is where yoga really is brilliant. And it's really about relaxing. Now, relaxation isn't, sitting on the couch drinking a beer. It isn't necessarily just relaxing the body. It is really the it really is knowing it's moving in the right direction. That's what relaxation is. When you move inside, so we can say things that people may not understand what this means. So we'll say it in several ways, and maybe there's something you'll find for yourself and say, me too. If we move inside, that's saying we're relaxing. If we're relaxing, we're actually moving inside. We're moving to a place where we can feel. Relaxing means we are actually, there's nothing to do here. I'm giving up doing. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to give up doing, like you got to go to school in 5 minutes. You're going to go to school in 5 minutes. You're going to go out on a date. You're going to go out on a date. That's not what we're talking about. I'm going to do nothing. No, the relaxation is a metaphor for I know that it's not in the date. It's not in the going to school. It's not in the food I'm eating. I mean, the food's great for the body, but for me, as a conscious being, it's not in those things. And if it's not in those things, then where is it? Well, it's inside. So relaxation is just letting go of the identification, you might say, or the promise to, it's knowing what direction to look in. So I find it, you can tell that to people and they're like, well, okay, great. Maybe I saw that on a poster about a meditation class. Go inside. Maybe I've taken a yoga class and my yoga teacher says, breathe and go inside. But more important is to relax. Now, everyone has this ability to relax. We may not be practicing it a lot. We may not, but we know what it's like to relax. And so we use the breath. Just relax. But that sense of relaxation gives us an ability to be more with what we feel. So you're right. If we're very steeped in what we're doing, we don't see that there's something behind what we're doing. If we're very, and we might say behind what we're doing is our thinking. But then if we're very steeped in our thinking, well, we don't see that there's something behind our thinking that's making that thinking real. That nature that is behind all of that. If we keep on going behind, there's a place where we can't go behind anymore. That's who we are. That's who we truly are. And that is not our bodies. It's a sense, it's an intangible field of consciousness. And to a young person that says, well, I don't see it, the first step is to relax and to practice relaxing and not doing. In that, it's possible that somewhere down the road, I mean, Sid would say this, says, you may not get it now, but the penny will drop. At some point, you'll say, oh my gosh, that's what they're talking about. I see it. And that's when it happens. But a guaranteed, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen not when you're trying to figure it out. It's going to happen when you're available to see it. And that happens through feeling. It doesn't, and it doesn't mean we stop thinking, because what we're feeling is our thinking. But like I said, that's the magic elevator. That's the magic wormhole. That's the magic slide, the chute. How do I get out of this? Just step right over here. Just feel the feeling that you're feeling. And if you're obsessed with doing, which our society is, which we're being trained to do, in school and homework and do this and do that, and we got to multitask, it's great. We have to find that wormhole, to find that place that sends us deep into our feeling and makes us available for what we're feeling, that can only happen if we pay attention between what we're doing, between the thoughts. It can only happen then. We can only visualize it then.
I think one of the things that may stop people from, may put people off and think, oh, I'm not going to do that, is because they're frightened of the feeling. Mm-hmm. Getting to the lovely feeling, that's great. But because they do have experience of it, but because their main experience is not of that lovely feeling now, because they're so busy listening to thought, I think it seems to me that a lot of people are too worried, or are worried about, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel that. So they're frightened of going into the feeling, because.
And that's where the courage comes in.
Yeah.
So the first step is got to be one of courage. That's where, do we stay in the same problems we have, the same repetitive habits that we have? Do we stay where we're getting more of what we don't want in life and less of what we want? Do we stay in that place because we don't want to feel? We don't want to feel what there is to feel. That's where courage comes into play. And I'm not sure there's an easy answer to that, except for every moment that we live is a chance to feel what there is. Every moment. So if you didn't do it for the last 8 hours because you're playing a video game, you didn't do it because you're very wrapped up in trying to figure things out, or whatever the situation is. If you don't do it, then now is a new moment. Now, here we are again. The now doesn't end. It's right now. And in this moment, we still have that perfect state of being inside. We still are this magnanimous, incredible, beautiful being that we could feel, and that's available to us. And we're still only, there's so many ways to say it. Some people say, well, we're one thought, that one special thought, and I say, feel that one special thought, but that we're that distance away from complete happiness and our true nature. And here's what I think the closest thing that I've ever found to getting the courage to feel what is. In other words, it gives us that elevator that brings us to a place where we're out of what we're normal, what's bugging us. We'll just say it that way. What's bugging us? What's like just getting us and don't know where I'm going in life? Whatever it is, the feeling, the icky, is the feeling of gratefulness. The one incredible thing to do, if there's a practice beyond going in, we talked about going in, because this practice is going in, but if there's a way to do this, is it's sort of handle on how to do it, is to feel gratefulness. So when we're in a state where we don't feel grateful, we feel, in fact, the opposite. We feel icky. If we can find some gratefulness somewhere, now it may not be about what's happening right before us on our plate in life. It might not be there, but it might be something. It could be a memory from the past. It could be our breath. It could be the ant crawling across our shoe. It could be anything to find great. So the thing about another way of looking at the secret to everything is that who we are is not anything. It's not that ant. It's not our boyfriend. It's not our girlfriend. It's not our problems. It's not our aspects of our life. And because it's not any of those things, it doesn't depend upon any of those things. The great illusion is that it does depend upon those things. I have to have the car. I don't have a car. I'm 17. All my friends have cars. I don't have a car. That's what's keeping me from happiness. I also had to have a soon-to-be 18-year-old boy, and he, that was his whole thing. Look, I just don't have what my friends are having, and I'm like, well, okay, there could be a time when you're going to get what your friends have, but that's the point is you could be happy now. No, I can't. Yes, you do, because that true happiness is feeling who you are, and there's nothing that it needs. So if you feel who you are by feeling grateful for anything. So when you feel gratefulness, you're really feeling your own nature. As soon as you feel gratefulness, that upliftment is now you're moving in. Now you're feeling who you are. And it might have taken, wow, look at that beautiful tree that I just saw. I look at the beach, the beautiful time I had walking on the beach. Look at the great food that I enjoy eating and I just ate. I did retail therapy. I went and I bought those pair of shoes. But now you're grateful for this pair of shoes. Now, if you don't see the secret to everything, you're going to say, well, I need to buy more shoes to feel more of that gratefulness. Or I feel better, now I'll buy bigger things. Or I'll go and see if I can get somebody tell me how how good I am or how great I am. I'll get something from the outside. The secret is that it's you that you're feeling now. Now you feel better. Your feeling state is better. And that lifted you out of that mood. That becomes super important. That becomes super on steroids, super wonderful. You use it to self-regulate if you realize that that's a feeling of you has just lifted. In fact, the part of the secret to everything, another way of saying it, is whenever you feel anything, you're really not feeling anything. You're feeling this intangible you. Even when you feel depressed, you're feeling you. But that's you in that moment. But as you get deeper into you, the feeling lifts. So you're becoming available for you. You know, the old expression, you got to take care of yourself first before you can possibly help anyone else. Before you can even help yourself, you have to relax into the ground of being. You have to feel yourself. You have to feel who you are. And where do you start? You start with exactly what is now, what the feeling is now. We might want happiness and joy, but that's not what's present this moment for in the reality of our experience. Yes, it's present in who we are, but we're not there. We're in the reality of this separate reality we talked earlier. This thought, our individual thoughts have brought us this. If we can be with that on a feeling level, guaranteed, magically, we start to shift to who deeper in who we are, and it uplifts everything. Our mood changes, everything will change. That's there's so many ways to, it's not the words. Nothing I'm saying is true. It's just, they're just words. But we're at a point, there's many ways to approach this, but they point to this sense of who we are and this feeling. And feeling, the secret is a beautiful feeling, is who we are. And we're going to get to that beautiful feeling if we pay attention to how we show up in this moment. And just like you said, if we're involved so much in the doing of life and in our thinking and our doing, we're not going to get to that until we shift to feeling. That's what I learned time and time again, is shifting to feeling. You know, if there's one thing, if someone said to me, what do you know now that would have made all the difference in the world had I known it when I was a teenager, or when I was in my 20s, or when I was a kid? What I know now is I'm not going to try to solve anything. I'm just going to be with my feelings. I'm just going to feel. And I'm going to have the courage to feel. And I know that it hurts. And that as I feel more, the hurt dissipates. Things change. The feeling will change. There's not a way that when consciousness pays attention, we are consciousness as beings. When we pay attention, what we pay attention to, if it's not real, it goes away. It has to. It just dissipates. It goes away. That's the secret of consciousness. And and what's left is this neutral consciousness, the neutral sense. And that neutral sense, once we start to know that that is the wisdom, that is who we are, that is love. Once we know that, once we start having this experience of us, so we're having this experience of life every moment. We're out there living. We're having this experience of life. Does that matter? Well, it matters when you need to learn to drive a car, It matters when you need to pay the bills. It matters when you need to go get good grades in school or whatever it is that you're doing. Then it relatively matters. But when it comes to knowing yourself, here's the news that may not be good news to some people who think they're going to figure it all out there. It doesn't matter one bit. It doesn't matter one bit. What we do in life matters not at all. Especially if it keeps us from feeling who we are. But once we feel who we are, then what we do is endowed with more joy. Then we can say, okay, let me have some fun with it. But knowing who we are is nothing you can take to the actual bank. It's not money. It's not even something you could, it's not a skill. It's just a feeling. It's a beautiful feeling. What are people looking for? Honestly, to boil it all down, I've never found anyone who wouldn't eventually see that what they're looking for is a beautiful feeling. And that beautiful feeling, one has to have the courage to look at what we are feeling in the moment. And then that intensifies. And that's where the courage comes in. If you're jealous and you don't want to look at it, and you don't want to, you have this outside sense of it, but you don't want to look and experience what it is, then it's not going to, it's going to perpetuate. That reality is going to be perpetuate. But here's where it's an illusion, and it's not an illusion. I've had people tell me, "No, you tell me my anger is, or my sense this is not real." And I'm like, well, it's real to you in the moment. So remember that separate reality. It's real to you. But there are other people who are in the same situation as you, with the same demographic background, who don't have that feeling in this moment. They might have it another time. What's the difference? Even tomorrow, will you have feeling tomorrow? Did it change? What really did change? What changed? And the same person today, tomorrow. All I did is go to sleep and wake up, or had a meal, or maybe let some time go by. See, it changed. If we know that something can change, and we know that if we just let go of what we're trying to do about it, and we just let go of so much doing in our life, that is going to begin. See, that's the first step of the courage. It begins that for us. So, yeah.
It's funny though, isn't it, that it seems like when you talk about courage, like it's a big thing and it's going to be really hard, and yet no, when it sounds like a big thing, but actually you take that first step and then it's like, well, what happened? Where's it gone? It's like, it seems like, oh, I don't know if I've got the courage, but actually it doesn't, it's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal.
No, it just sounds like it when you think you need to, and you do need some courage to experiment, to just take that, just do it as an experiment and see.
Right. Well, the funny thing about courage, I've heard people who had done these great feats, like run into the World Trade Center and pull somebody out, and people would be like, "Oh, you're so brave and you're a hero." And in the most candid moments of these people, whether they be a war hero or a fireman, or maybe somebody who just was walking down the street and did what looks like courage to everyone else, but they did something that saved someone or helped someone. And in the most candid moments, I've heard them say, "Wait a minute, I don't think of myself as a hero. I didn't think that I had any courage." But what usually they will say is, "I was just the right person in the right place." Who else was going to do it? It was only me. I was there. I had to do the mouth resuscitation. I needed to help that person. And so it's a small step. And they realized that wisdom filled them with this ability to do that. Later on, they thought about it. Wow, if I thought about it, I wouldn't have done that, you know? But they don't. They just respond in the moment because wisdom has swept through, removed all that fear and all that, and just let them do it. And so we are all that person. We are all that capable of that innate courage that we have. It does take a first step. And I think that's where I would encourage, and I'm hearing you say that earlier, when it's like when we're wrapped up in what we're doing and we've got these problems and life isn't really what we want it to be, and maybe our parents are ruining our lives. We see it that way, or maybe it's just we're not getting what we need, and that's a poor me, poor me, poor me. And if we could possibly just take, if I can encourage people, young people, anybody, to just take one step towards relaxing. That's the beautiful thing about relaxing. And it might mean relaxing the body at first. It might mean relaxing the mind by walking in the woods or on the beach. What is it you like to do? Watching that favorite show that's an uplifting show, but it just sort of relaxes us. It might mean, it can even mean eating that favorite food or just relax. It could even mean, for some who don't have a particular propensity or addiction, it might even mean having a half glass of wine. It's something that starts the process of relaxing. I wouldn't recommend that so much, but it's something, whatever is real to us, to relax. That relaxation goes deeper and deeper. It's a first step it's the first step. I find it's incredible. It's the first step. If somebody wants to take a yoga class, that can help. If somebody wants to just lay on a blanket under a tree in a meadow, or maybe in your bedroom, and just let go of one's thinking, just relax in. If whatever it is, I would say relaxation is the beginning.
Yes, I think sometimes taking a class, like you say, in yoga or something like that, is good in that it makes you take the time out, because otherwise it can be, I'll do it later.
And here's what taking a class or going to the Tai Chi class or going to the meditation can be difficult for people. But here's what doing something that's directed by someone else, that's healthy and could bring you to a quieter place within yourself. Here's why the benefit is that it's not you directing yourself. There's a magic that happens. See, if you're trying to reach a place of non-doing, but you're trying to reach a place of non-doing, listen to that. You're doing to try to reach a place of non-doing, and it doesn't work. That's why, you go to the self-help bookshelf and you look at all the little things, do this and do that, and you too can have this and you can have that. There was something, and I don't, a question is whether I should bring up another type of thing that people may be into and use it as an example of something that doesn't particularly work too well. But there was something called The Secret out there. And people were like, wow, whoa, that's great. Look, all I need to do is vibrate at that right level. And when I vibrate at the right level, everything's going to come. Was there a grain of truth in there? Yes. But can people vibrate at that right level? No, because they're trying to do something. You can't try to do something. That's where relaxation is the opposite. You're saying, not me. I can't do it. I'm not going to try to do it. Now, so people can become, relaxation can become a skill, but taking a class is a good way to relax, as long as that class can be relaxing. I know people who have said, I'm going to do meditation, and then they end up sitting for an hour, and they end up thinking the entire hour how painful it is for me to sit here. And I wouldn't recommend that. There are people who have meditated for 50 years, and they become very good at sitting after a while and not being so pained in the body. But they really have not relaxed yet. They look like they might have something going on, but it's not that. So I wouldn't recommend that at all. And I wouldn't recommend taking a yoga class where all of a sudden you're going to be asked to put your foot behind your head. Because it has to be something it has to be something you like and you enjoy. It has to be something you enjoy, to get joy in you. It bubbles up from inside. And so it has to be something that you feel you're attracted to and you enjoy. And then relaxation automatically happens. Sid used to say, I'll go right back. I remember in the Long Beach talk, it was, I don't know if it was the second or the third day, probably the second day, in the afternoon, we coming to thinking we're going to have an entire day of Sid Banks, which was wonderful, 2 or 3 hours in the morning, 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. Then you have a nice dinner and you talk to all the people you haven't met for in a while, and all the friends, and meet new people. And what could be better? And it was about 11 o'clock, and he says, something, I really think we're going to end today and just go do something you enjoy. So we went to the aquarium. It was in Long Beach, and they have an aquarium there. He said, do not open your computer. Don't send emails. Don't answer texts. There weren't any texts at the time. It was in the year 2000, I believe it was. And, but don't answer emails. Don't do business. Don't call home. Just have a good time, whatever that means to you. Because when we have a good time, our true nature bubbles up from inside. We're enjoying. We're inspired in spirit. We're inspired. That's looking for the beautiful feeling. That's relaxing. So we're relaxing, and we're able to look for the beautiful feeling. Now, are we really looking? We're present for it. So when Sid said, look for a beautiful feeling, one could interpret that to mean I'm going to go do something. Just be present. Words, we're using words, and we got to kind of go beyond the words, but be present for one's life and what is in one's life. That's most important, is the feeling. To know that when we feel, we are feeling our current thinking. We may not see the thinking, but we're feeling the current thinking. We can always feel something, and that feeling manifests in our body. Another way of saying, and I'm not sure how this aligns with anything other than my own experience, but when I'm feeling, I see feeling as the body's experience of thought. I see the other flip of that coin is the mind's experience of thought, or the intellect's experience of thought is what we would think of thought. I think I'll wear my red shoes today instead of my blue shoes. That thought that we have, that most people say, there's a thought, right? But we can have an experience of that thought in our bodies. It's a feeling. So what do we feel? We feel we can feel that, that feeling of fear. We can intellectualize it. Oh, fear. And it sounds like the same word when we speak about it, but it's here. It doesn't go anywhere. It's going to just spin us around. We're going to ruminate on that one. But as soon as we drop into the body, now that's just yoga language, drop into the body. As soon as we are present, said, go look for a beautiful feeling. As soon as we are present for what is, we notice that we've got, butterflies in our stomach. We've got a gripping feeling in our gut. That's the feeling of anger or disappointment or sadness or whatever it is, or anxiety. And that will change again. So people say, well, this I've learned and where do we go for that feeling? People's like, well, it means something for different people. Again, we have a separate reality, right? And to some parties, you say, I'm going to feel. What do I feel? They are more intellectual with that. What do they feel? And another person is kind of like, well, they go into the past of what I felt before. What are you feeling now? So the body is now. It has to be. It's here. It is right here. So as soon as we start feeling in the body, we're anchored in the body. And that's not in conflict with the three principles at all. It's just knowing that, Sid said there are all these practices in the world and all these religions and all these faiths, and they all have the truth. They all have the truth. And if you can see the truth, then you don't need to do all of that because you've gotten it. But there are so many different paths and ways to look at it. There is a way to look at it that's more body-centered. And to me, it's because, again, I started this by saying there's the yoga and there's the principles. Those are my two biggest influences. And from the yogic perspective, allowing people to ground in their body, they're really beginning to feel more. And then they're beginning to feel more. That dissipates. Now, there's a point where the body is a vehicle, but there's a point where we need to go beyond that. And that we won't talk about today. That we won't talk about today, where we start to feel who we are as spirits. Yeah.
So just briefly, you said when you were younger that you wished you'd known about this. So how did you come to know about it? What changed for you?
Well, it was in 1987, I believe. It was just a happenstance, really. I was having some difficulties with a relationship, and somebody handed me this book called Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense, and it was some of the founding people in this understanding had written this book, and it was just very primitive, and it didn't really talk about the principles so much, but I got some feeling, some pull out of it, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to find out who wrote this book, and I'm going to go to where they are. And one of the authors was in the Tampa area. So I said, I called them up and they said, come on over and we'll, what's going on for you? I said, relationship issues. And they said, come on over. So I went over there to get a therapy session. So long story short, after the therapy session, which was pleasant and all, and I would go back for more, I'm standing at the desk, and as you do, check out, and you're going to pay, and I noticed there's a bunch of tapes in a table behind the desk, and I noticed they seemed to be a little interesting. They had a picture of a man on there, each one of them, and I was like, and I'm the type of person where if I see somebody, this is back in the day when there were cassette tapes, but if I see somebody with a CD, or for that matter, just their earbuds and listening to something, I might say, if it looks like I'm not disturbing them, what are you listening to? What book are you reading? So I'm that type of person. So I said, what are those? And they're like, oh, that's the guy that came up with, he's behind, but not for you right now. When somebody tells me it's not, well, this is early on when people were like, we need to be, this is a professional therapy center. We need to be, we're going to look at it in a different way. So when somebody tells me that, that's when I want those tapes. You tell me it's not for me, I want to see those, right? So I kind of grabbed one. They handed me one. I looked at the address and I sent away for them and I got those tapes. So I ended up, when they came to me in the mail, I listened to the first one and I said to my family, I said, I'm going out for some milk, which is just going to the store, and I'm driving and there's a cassette player in my car and I put the tape in and I'm listening to the tape. And it should take maybe 15 minutes round trip to get that milk, but maybe it was 4 hours I came back, because I just drove and then I just parked my car and I looked out over this lake, I believe, and I listened and I went into this timeless place and I was listening to Sid Banks. And it was there were 23 or 24 tapes and it was one of them. And I listened to this tape. So it wasn't 4 hours long, but I listened to it and I said, there's something, I've never experienced this before. There's something magic. How do you put something in a tape drive? How do you put something in and you listen to it and it changes everything for you? And I had no idea what he was saying. I mean, I did, but I didn't. And even the first 15 minutes, he had a Scottish accent, and the quality of the tape was bad. And I was like, and then it hit. And so and let me just say that, I didn't have a particularly traumatic childhood or anything like that. I grew up in a really nice family and all. It was some anxiety my parents had, and I picked up on that anxiety, and I kind of grew up with this sense that, okay, life is good, but I always felt like there was something missing, something not quite right, something I was not quite adequate for a lot. Even though I had academic success and things going on, and I just felt like something didn't fit. I didn't fit. I wasn't sure who I was. How do I fit in? And so I had this constant level of anxiety that another person wouldn't say was particularly a tough sense of anxiety. But I had it. And I also had what I didn't realize is I had a sense of guilt for, I'm not sure what it was, but I had a feeling of guilt. And when I listened to that tape, I was 33 years old when I heard it. All the guilt fell away. All the guilt fell away. All the anxiety fell away. Everything went. I was in this, it was the first time I felt a deep sense of, I think I knew how to relax, but now this was really, relaxation never ends. We talk about going deeper and deeper and deeper. That's what we're talking about. And I fell into this hole in time where it was a timeless state. And I realized for the first time in my life that this is love, that this is who I am. And it happened right away. So I came back and my family, I had explained to them, and I had, I listened to the other tapes over and over again. And a funny story, and this is kind of a dumb thing, I'm kind of embarrassed to say, I got to the last tape, and I might have heard some of these tapes several times. So maybe I've listened to, 22, 23 tapes, maybe add them all up, maybe, 40 times but we're talking about a couple of years of listening and be driving, only because I had already gotten it in the first tape. I already got this secret. It just happened. But it was deepening, and I kept on listening. But then I hit the tape, and it just happened to be magically the last tape that I was listening to for the first time. And Sid said on the tape, he said, he was just in a very, very lighthearted mood. And he said in his talk, he says, once you get it, once you see this, he said, he says, you don't need this anymore. He says, just take the tape, and he says, give it a kiss first and throw it out the window. And I literally opened the window of my house, and I live on the edge of a woods. So there's just lots of bushes and woods out there. And I took all the tapes and threw them out the window. I'm not hearing you for some reason. You're hearing me, but I'm not.
I have my microphone off because otherwise the feedback.
Oh, okay. That's good. So, and then I was telling this at a conference once, and people were like, well, what did you get those tapes back? I said, well, yeah, probably about a year later, I went out into the woods and I looked for the tapes, and I couldn't find them. But and to this day, people are looking for those tapes. They haven't been released fully. There's only bits and pieces that have been released again. I think they're marvelous. They're just incredible. You probably heard them. There may be some copies around. I don't have any anymore.
There are some CDs that you can get from Lone Pine and on Amazon and so on. You can get at least part of it.
Part of it. There's some really incredible ones that Lone Pine, Elsie was telling me Lone Pine wouldn't release yet, and maybe sometime they will. Maybe it was Chip was telling me that. But I'm the type of person that, if you talk about this, I can talk about this forever. And
forever. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we should, we should stop now, because that's been fantastic. And I just wanted to hear about your story from that. That was really good. So, yeah, we'll stop and we'll talk again. But for today, thank you so much for that. That's been really, really, really good. And I've certainly been in a lovely feeling.
Great.
So I hope everyone else has too.
So.
Thanks very much. I'll see you again soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.